we're seeing these short-term measures like price cuts, as we mentioned, and then there's the more sophisticated measures like health technology appraisals and assessments and risk-sharing agreements, patient access schemes. And in these cost containment times, Andreas, are we going to see more of the short-term measures that we're seeing in Greece at the moment, rather than the more complicated ones that we're seeing in Germany and the UK? Is that where we're heading?
I guess we always will see both of them, because if you look, and I want to again put it in a probably a little broader context, if you look what happened with the financial crisis, all the governments were investing a lot of money in all the stimuli packages. So, and now it's the time, and you see it in the UK as well, where everybody looks, how can we consolidate their finances and their budgets? And healthcare is usually one of the area, it's probably like defense and others as well, where they look at and look how they can reduce the cost. So I believe these cost measures in terms of cost cuts will probably stay. They're kind of a short-term measures, even if we don't like it, but that might stay. And they will come up now and then. We had in Germany, just in Germany, or Europe, since 2005, 25 healthcare reforms. Can you imagine? And that's a big burden, not just for the people in the countries, it's also for us as an industry to react to it. My hope is that HTA, which I think makes a lot of sense, that we come to, let's say, to an agreement where, first of all, the industry has a seat at the table and can discuss with the authorities what are the best measures, that we take, let's say, a holistic perspective where we not always look at the siloed approach. This is a hospital budget, this is a pharmaceutical budget, and this is a device budget, that we look what kind of savings could we create in, just one example, if you have an antibiotic where you can release a patient 3-4 days earlier from the hospital, that saves actually a lot of money. But if it is in a siloed budget, nobody cares about this antibiotic.
So you're looking at the holistic, societal approach.
Societal approach is important.
And Newton, Bruno, you concur that concept?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and we could even consider going even further than that, just not just looking at the healthcare cost, but perhaps the burden on the carers, or the impact on employment, and so on and so forth. I mean, we believe that when you look at the value of products, and that's what we're talking about here, we should just not look at cost effectiveness, but rather look at other parameters, such as also patient experience, or even the patient willingness to pay in certain instances, for example. And in that context, take into account innovation. We, the representatives of the pharma industry, in the business of innovation, of bringing novel products, and we need to bear in mind the contribution of drugs to society. I mean, just to mention one number, I mean, since 1960, in the last 50 years, in our countries around Europe and the US, the life expectancy of the men and women has improved by 10 years. And we strongly believe that drugs and innovation in the field of drugs has been instrumental in achieving those results.
Thank you.
And we need to take that into account.
So we've mentioned some of the tools being used. QALY's willingness to pay, which is not always something that applies to the UK easily. Let's have a look at the QALY, because that seems to be an interesting one for everyone, and possibly NICE's future role, which is kind of being topical now in the media. To you, John, because you're a health economist, how good is the QALY for determining cost effectiveness of drugs compared to other tools? And then hopefully, Carol, you will respond to that.
I agree with everything I said. I've been a health economist for a long time, and my role at the Office of Economics and in the profession predates NICE by quite a long way. And I have to say that as an economist, I welcome the creation of formal health technology appraisal bodies, because that way we get hopefully the rationality that we're talking about. We all know there's very many ways you can improve processes, but at least we get some kind of rational, transparent approach, which we can argue about. So QALYs, basically QALYs were a very big step forward. I remember when I was starting to do health economics back in the 80s, there were seminal articles saying, wouldn't it be great if we could compare the cost effectiveness of heart transplant with the cost effectiveness of hip replacement? One saves lives, extends lives, one doesn't do much towards the length of life, but certainly improves its quality immensely. But of course at that time there was no tool to compare those two things. So the QALY enabled that. So for me the QALY was a huge practical step forward, but it's a very limited tool. It can do some things, some crude necessary things very well, but lots of things it can't do. I guess that from all the discussions we've had with Carol and colleagues at NICE over the years, that everyone at NICE recognises that would be better than anybody else. But the QALY is a good starting point, but you need a lot more, all the kind of societal dimensions of value that you've already mentioned, I would heartily reinforce my view that those now need to be much more explicitly taken into account in addition to others.
Carol, to you.
Where do I start?
I don't know.
I'd probably start from thinking about what HTA is in general, and the way that I see it is very much as a tool. It's a tool to enable whoever is having to make decisions about the allocation of healthcare to be an intelligent customer. And so it provides a framework, and really QALYs within that provide one part of that toolbox. But they're quite a good starting point. They do, just as John has described, allow you to take account of two very, very important components of what new technologies can bring, which is either they're going to extend life, or they're going to make your quality of life better within a standard lifespan. So you've got a tool, it's HTA, and you've got one mechanism to allow you to be able to start to do that thing that you need to do, which is in a sense be quite systematic and be quite consistent across the evaluation. But a QALY is not sufficient to be able to make a decision. There's absolutely no doubt about that, and I think that's where the debate both is moving and needs to move. And of course, it's been around for a while, the use of the QALY and how limited it might be in capturing all of the dimensions of value. We've recognised that right from the start, that the QALY is just the start of the conversation. It is by no means the end, but it provides that consistent framework. And I think that we actually have to put a call out to our methodologists, the people who are really underpinning all of this with robust science, to start to help us come to some idea of what you can do to enhance that QALY approach. And there have been lots and lots of people who are advocating doing that, but there's nothing yet that can systematically do it. We need to put a call out to those academics. And in the meantime, we need to, one, accept that the QALY is just a starting point, but it does provide a useful framework for that dialogue. But these other dimensions have become important.
Thank you, Carol. Newton, do you want to respond to what Carol's said?
Well, I agree with what Carol stated completely. And in fact, Lily just recently convened an outside group of experts in the field of HTA in Washington, D.C. just last month. And this was exactly the debate that we had. We fortunately included two patient representatives in that group also. And the debate that ensued was quite robust. Representatives from NICE in the UK, from France, from the US, from Canada. And what we found was everyone could come to an agreement that it's a decent starting point, but that we need to rapidly move away from the rather restrictive decisions that often come about as a result of just looking at particular cost per QALY as some sort of a threshold. And the voice of the patient is the one that I would say is most urgently needed. Which can be qualitative at times, but in ways that we can embed that in a process that is repeatable, where that voice of the patient is heard. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're developing medicines for patients. We're approving, we're reimbursing medicines for patients. And I think this is the crucial element. So I think we had some great methodologists there, some eminent health economists who were a part of this panel, and I think they're wanting to take that charge up. My hope is that there's allowance for some experimentation on the part of some of the HTA bodies and maybe a bit of broadening